Welcome to the March edition of What's in Bloom at the Ruth Bancroft Garden. So each month we go around the garden and pick out a selection of plants to feature on our What's in Bloom sheet that we hand out to our garden visitors. And this time of year, a lot of stuff is coming into bloom, so we have a lot to choose from. And one of the things we put on this month's is Coreopsis gigantea. This is a daisy relative native to California, has these big, stout, succulent stems, and it goes completely dormant in the summer months. And at that time of the year, all you see are the dead leaves like this, and visitors often think the plant's died. But it comes right back with the fall rains and puts out these new bright green, highly dissected leaves, look sort of like a carrot top. And then in the late winter to early spring, follow these beautiful yellow flowers. Some botanical authorities prefer to separate this plant and its close relatives into a sister genus, Leptocynne, and so they call it Leptocynne gigantea, but most people call it Coreopsis gigantea. Acacia is a large genus in the pea family, and we used to speak about the acacias in the American Southwest, acacias in Africa, acacias in Australia. Australia has the greatest number of them, and the genus has been split up. So now only the Australian ones are still in acacia, and the other ones have been renamed to other genera. This is one of these acacias from Australia, and its name is Acacia glaucoptera. Glauca refers to the milky blue-green color of the leaves, and the terra on the end is Ptera, means wing. And that's because you can see that the stems are flattened and have little projections like wings on them. So that's a descriptive term. And out of those flattened stems come these little yellow puffballs. A lot of acacias have flowers like this. Yellow is a very common color in acacia, and it really does make a wonderful effect between the blue-green of the stems and the leaves and the yellow of the puffballs, and then the red of the new foliage. It has a nice coppery red tinge as it first comes out. This is one of the acacias that's really a shrub. Some of the others grow into a tree. Acacia glaucoptera. The Protea family is a southern hemisphere family, and the two countries that have the most species are Australia and South Africa. And from Australia, we have plants like the grevilleas and the banksias, and from South Africa, we have the proteas and leucadendrons and leucosperms. Well, this is a leucadendron. So these plants don't have a big showy flower head like a lot of the other plants in the family do. They have a little flower head, but that is surrounded by colored bracts that really set it off nicely. And really the bracts are more the show than the flowers are. This one is Leucadendron Little Bit. It's a short plant with small heads, and it does get more oranges in it as it goes along, but it starts out with mostly pale yellow in the bracts at the beginning. This one's just getting started, and we'll be putting on a show all month. Leucadendron Little Bit. We have a lot of aloes at the Ruth Bancroft Garden, and many of them bloom in the winter and spring months. So there's a lot happening right now in the garden. A lot of our aloes come from South Africa because it has more aloes with a little bit of cold tolerance than other places do. But there are aloes from farther up in tropical Africa that are wonderful plants, and this is one of them. This is Aloe cameronii. So it is cold sensitive, and as a result, we've planted here where there's a canopy overhead that gives it a little bit of extra protection, and that's just enough to make it happy and keep it from getting frost damage in the cold of the winter. You can see it has a little bit of a coppery red tinge to the leaves, and that's a major feature of it. If we grow it here in too much shade, it turns green, and you lose that wonderful coppery tinge, which is one of its strong points. It also has very long, curving, red-orange flowers, longer than most aloes, and really makes a wonderful display when it's in flower, as you can see here. It comes from tropical East Africa, and we're lucky that we can grow it here. Aloe cameronii.
Agaves come from the Western Hemisphere only, and most of them from Mexico, some in the United States in the Southwest, some southward in Central America and northern South America, some in the Caribbean, but Mexico has the greatest number. This one here requires a little backstory. So, Howard Scott Gentry, when he wrote his book on agaves, described a species called Agave titanota, notable for its very pale, almost white leaves. Titanota means alabaster white, and it comes from northern Oaxaca. Later on, agaves nearby were discovered that were not as white, and including this one. So it was first named by its collection number, FO76, from Felipe Otero, who collected the seeds for this species and brought it into cultivation. Well, there was controversy after that whether FO76 was a form of Titanota or a different entity, and it was subsequently named as Agave oteroi after him. However, its flowers are not very different from those of Agave titanota, and some people feel that its separation as a separate species is not warranted. So there's a little war going on as to whether we should call this plant Agave oteroi or Agave titanota. Well, it was given the name oteroi, so we're going to go with that name for the time being until this all gets sorted out. In any case, as a small plant, this plant tends to be really gnarly and have really dramatic teeth. And as it gets older and larger, the teeth aren't as dramatic anymore until finally it reaches a point where it flowers, which this one is doing now. Actually, the first flowers are just starting to separate at the tips now, not quite open yet, but very close to it. This comes from right near the border between Puebla and Oaxaca and the area southeast of Mexico City. It's not terrifically cold tolerant, but we can get away with it here at the Ruth Bancroft Garden. We've got it all the way to flowering size. Agave oteroi. Aloe is largely an African genus, with many species found in South Africa and many others found up through East Africa. But it also occurs in the Arabian Peninsula and in Madagascar. And this is one of the Madagascar aloes, Aloe vaombe. Plants in Madagascar can get very tall, even to 20 feet tall, but you never see them that big here in California. This species is a little bit on the tender side, coming from Madagascar as it does, and so we have it planted here in this bed that gets covered in the wintertime. So that gives it some protection. It can get a little bit of a bronzy tinge to the leaf. The leaves are kind of shiny, but ours has stayed pretty green. And here it is flowering for the first time ever. So we're very proud of it to have reached flowering size. The inflorescence is well branched, as you can see, and the usual flower color is red or red-orange. There are yellow forms, but they're very rare. We were hoping ours might turn out to be yellow because the population for which the seed came does have yellow plants, but ours has turned out to be a red-orange one. But a beautiful aloe, Aloe vaombe. That brings us to the close of our March What's in Bloom. But before I sign off, I want to point out a special plant that's a little bit small and oftentimes missed by garden visitors. And it didn't make our What's in Bloom because we really weren't sure how long the blooms would last, but really worth pointing out. And that is this wonderful little bulb, Leucadendron pustulata. The name pustulata, and here they are over here too, is because there are little bumps on the leaf that are called pustules, and it's more present on some of the plants than others, but it's an interesting feature. And the flowers are variable in color. So this one here is more on the purple side with some blue at the base. This one here, the open flowers turn a little bit more pale. This one here has a little bit more red in it. Nice to see the variation. So we encourage you to come to the Bancroft Garden and see some of these little gems that are scattered here and there around the garden, and really a wonderful treat to see if you come here in person. If you're not able to come in person, then check out our website. I do post photos of things like this on Tumblr periodically, and we have lots of plant highlights that we've done on all different plants in the garden over the years that are all archived on our website. We have lots of classes and events here at the garden, so check it out. The Ruth Bancroft Garden.